Prior to this lesson, you should have read the TEWT scenario. This is the first lesson of the TEWT Briefing Blueprint package. It aims to teach you about what's expected in the delivery of a ground brief. It will provide you with the teaching points, a ground brief demonstration, and a summary of the features identified during the brief. The ground brief is the first of 3 briefs delivered during a TEWT. The ground brief can be utilized in the TEWT environment as well as in training and operational settings. The purpose of the ground brief is to orientate your audience to the ground on which you are briefing them. This is the ground that you will later occupy to conduct your operation from or on. Often your audience has just arrived at the location. The ground brief gives them the chance to orientate their maps to the ground and gain a common understanding of the terrain and its effects. During the ground brief, you're required to detail the key terrain within your future area of operations, the AO, and its influence upon both friendly and enemy forces. The purpose of the ground brief is to also detail the key terrain within the area of interest, the AI, surrounding your AO, and how this will influence your operations. The ground brief is delivered in a set format and sequence and covers the following areas. Firstly, detail the 6-figure grid reference, which is your current location. Secondly, indicate the direction of north from your current location. This will allow your audience to orientate their maps. Finally, you need to identify to your audience the essential elements of the ground within your AO and AI. These key elements are further broken down into the following areas: terrain, enemy location, and own troop locations. In order to detail the ground in a logical manner, the conduct of the ground brief is done in the following sequence. As shown on the blue card, you need to describe your area from left to right and break up the ground from near, through middle, to far ground. You should consider the breakup of the near, middle and far ground to encompass obvious terrain features and also weapon ranges. The best way to ensure your audience can identify these areas is to use obvious and distinguishable reference points. You should also minimize the reference points used. They should include only those that are identifiable and will make your description of the ground clear. In order to have successfully delivered your ground brief, you need to have achieved the following end state. Firstly, you will have orientated your audience to the ground. They'll be able to both visualize the terrain in front of them and how it will influence enemy and friendly forces. They'll also be able to relate this information back to the map, while taking into consideration the wider AO and AI. Finally, you'll have clearly described to them the ground and its influences to the extent that your next brief on the situation can be visualized and easily related to the ground. You'll now be shown the ground brief for the scenario presented in this package.
Okay gents, I'm now going to cover the ground brief for this location. Before I commence, I just ask that you have your maps in your possession and you keep them orientated at all times. Also, when I indicate scene, when I indicate to your reference point that you report back scene. We're currently located at grid 965, 196, which is the centre of the right forward combat team within the 5 RAR battle group defensive position into engagement area Dire Straits. If you all now turn around to your 6 o'clock, I'll identify to you north. Reference your front 20 metres, you'll identify the prominent telephone pole. That is a line through us to true north. Seen?
Seen.
Okay, face back around to your 12 o'clock. The first reference point, which we'll continuously come back to, is our 12 o'clock reference point. That is to your front 100 metres, the lone dead tree. That is the 12 o'clock. Seen?
Seen.
I'll now detail to you the arcs, commencing with the right of arc. Reference our dead tree at 12 o'clock. If you come right 3 o'clock, 700 metres, you'll identify a prominent bend in the river. This is the right of arc and extends out to the large rocky face feature in the far ground which dominates the horizon. Seen?
Seen.
That is right of arc. If you come back to your 12 o'clock position, I'll now detail left of arc. Reference 12 o'clock. If you come left 9 o'clock, 700 metres, you'll identify up on the forward slopes of a knoll a prominent house with a cream apex roof. That is the left of arc. It is also the centre of the left forward combat team within the 5 RAR defence. Seen?
Seen.
I'll now detail the sectors to you, working from left through to right. If you maintain your orientation onto the left of arc and come one handspan to the right, down into the low ground. The near ground is from this position to the prominent left-hand edge of a light brown paddock that you'll see in the low ground. That is the near ground, which at a range of 800 metres is the effective range for small arms fire as well as short-range anti-armoured weapons from the forward pits. The middle ground is reference the left-hand corner of the paddock out to a prominent tree line running left to right at a range of 3,000 metres. That is the middle ground, and details to us an open corridor for the enemy to move through at high speed. However, it should be noted that it will be covered by the forward pits, not only from our position, but also the 7 RAR battle group, who is referenced to the left of arc, approximately 2,000 metres to the south. The far ground in this sector is referenced the tree line, a further 2,000 metres south to a range of 5,000 metres. This is a continuation of the high-speed corridor for the enemy. However, once again, it should be noted that it will be covered by the forward pits from the 7 RAR defensive position, as well as the Divisional Reserve counter-attack position, ABFL-1. That is the left-hand sector. Once again, focus in on our 12 o'clock. The centre sector. The near ground is from this position through our 12 o'clock tree to the prominent bend in the road that you'll see at 800 metres. That is the near ground. Reference the bend in the road. If you were to come a one fist to the left at a range of approximately 1,000 metres, you'll identify 2 silos. Say seen.
Seen.
I'll use these silos as a further reference point. However, it should be noted that these mark the centre of the engagement area, and as a result are a brigade target reference point, TRP Alpha 1. 1,000 metres further to the south of the silos is the middle ground. Reference the silos. If you come one fist to the right and add 1,000 metres, you'll identify a prominent yellow house with a red roof. Say seen.
Seen.
To the right of the house, you'll identify a thin tree line as it moves off to the right. This marks Logan River, which is in dead ground to us from this position. The Logan River is a major obstacle within the engagement area and our area of operations. In most areas, it has 10 to 20 metre high banks, as well as spanning between 30 and 40 metres. Engineer enhancement of the river within our AO and the engagement area will continue to force the enemy to the south. Once on the eastern side, so this side of the river, you will identify that it is an open corridor, and the enemy should be able to generate a 2 combat team up frontage on an advance onto this position. However, once again, it should be noted that there are numerous creek lines between ourselves and the Logan River, as well as farming fences which will disrupt his formations. Reference the silos once again. If you come one handspan to the right and plus 2,000 metres, you'll identify on the forward slopes of a spur line a prominent white house with green roof. Seen.
Seen.
I'll now use this house as a reference point. Reference the house. If you were to drop back into our direction 500 metres, this is the area of Corcoran's Bridge, which is the only permanent bridge within our AO. It is dual-laned concrete structure, and as a result will be a reserve demolition, and it will be manned by a demolition guard from 7 RAR. Reference the green roof house. If you were to come right 2 knuckles and add a further 1,000 metres, you'll identify a prominent bald spur line running left to right. This marks the far ground, but that spur line is a potential support by fire position for the enemy and key terrain for him to be able to support breaching of the Logan River. As a result, that will be a key TAI during the defensive battle. That is the centre sector. I'll get you to focus back on our 12 o'clock tree and I'll detail the right-hand sector. The near ground for the right-hand sector is from our bend in the road previously indicated across to the right to our bend in the river at approximately 700 metres. That is the near ground. With regards to the bend in the river, the enemy moving through the right-hand sector will have restrictive movement as he will be forced on the northern side up against the river. You should note that the river in this part of the AO is our northern divisional boundary between ourselves and 3 UK Division who are on the northern side. 19 Brigade is a defensive position which referenced the bend in the river, right 2 o'clock, 3,000 metres is where he has a blocking position. Reference the bend in the river once again. If you come left 1 hand span, you'll identify a prominent shed in the open. Plus to the shed a further 500 metres, you'll once again identify a thin tree line running left to right or north to south. This is the Logan River within the right hand sector. Once again, a major obstacle to the enemy, and as a result is the centre of our battle group blocking obstacle. The far ground extends from the river line, which is the tree line, out to the high ground in the distance. You'll note that reference the shed, right 1 knuckle, add 2,500, a prominent bald spur line with a cluster of buildings on the centre. Seen?
Seen.
I'll now utilise those buildings as a reference point. However, it should be noted that that spur line once again affords the enemy a support by fire location in his breaching of the Logan River. This will become another TAI for the defensive battle. The far ground is from the cluster of buildings on the centre of that spur line out to our right of arc, distance marker being the rocky faced feature. This is the direction of the Undalla corridor between those 2 reference points. This is the enemy's main axis of advance onto our position through that corridor and is currently the location of our divisional covering force being centred on 2nd Cavalry Regiment and elements of 1R and ZIR. This axis of advance is restrictive terrain to the enemy's 2 mech div, as it'll stretch his advance columns through the restrictive ground as it extends out towards the west. As a result of the restrictive terrain, it will be a brigade and divisional offensive support TAIs throughout this area where we'll disrupt the enemy's advance. The breakout from this restrictive terrain, Force 2 mech div, which will allow him to once again break into tactical formations, is reference the rocky top feature, left 1 fist in the open ground at 6,000 metres. That is his breakout location. Gentlemen, are there any questions on the ground brief?
No.
The consolidation provides you with a summary of the reference points given during the ground brief. Grid 965196 is the location for the ground brief, which is the centre of the right forward combat team within the 5 RAR battle group defensive position. A line from the position of the audience through the power pole is true north. The lone dead tree in the low ground is the 12 o'clock position for the ground brief. The right of arc is the prominent bend in the river, continuing out in a line to the large rocky-faced feature further in the distance. The lone house is the left of arc, and also marks the centre of the left forward combat team within the battle group defensive position. The essential areas between the arcs, moving from near through middle to far ground, are now outlined. The left-hand sector is shown here. The left-hand sector is focused on the area 1 handspan right of the left of arc house. The near ground is identified as the area from the audience's position to the left-hand edge of the prominent light brown paddock at a distance of 800 metres. The middle ground is located beyond the near ground, through to a distance of 3,000 metres, which is the edge of a thin tree line running east-west. The 7 RAR battle group occupies the high ground, 1,500 metres southeast of the left of arc house. The far ground is plus of the tree line at 3,000 metres for a further 2,000 metres. The centre sector is shown here. The near ground extends from the audience's location to the bend in the road. The silos, identified here, mark the centre of the brigade engagement area and are known as TRP Alpha 1. The Logan River marks the far edge of the middle ground. Cochrane's Bridge, key terrain for both friendly and enemy forces, and the site of a reserve demolition is located here. The far ground extends from the river through to the high ground in the distance. A TAI will be located on the prominent spur line running north-south. The right-hand sector is shown here. The near ground extends from the bend in the road across to the bend in the river, which is the right of arc reference point. The Logan River is the divisional boundary between the Australians and 3 UK Division. 19 UK Brigade is located on the northern side of the river. From the large shed, marking the centre of the near ground plus 500 metres, the thin tree line of the Logan River marks the western edge of the middle ground. At a range of 3,500 metres, the prominent spur line with a cluster of buildings on it is another key TAI within the AO. The far ground, extending from the cluster of buildings north to the rocky face feature, is the direction of the Undella Corridor.